Inflation is a very serious subject. You can argue it's the way democracies die. When democracy dies in Latin America, inflation is a big part of it. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you overdo it too much, you ruin your civilization a lot. And so, of course, it's a big, long-range danger. If you look at the Roman Republic, even after they went to an empire with an absolute ruler, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years. And eventually, the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-range danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war. I would argue that venture capital is throwing too much money too fast and there's a considerable wretched excess in venture capital and other forms of private equity. And so we have a stock market which some people use like a gambling parlor. And the transactions of the people who love the gambling parlor aspect of the business and those who want to make long-term investments to take care of their old age and so forth. I mean, you muddle it in one market and it goes out of control because the stock market becomes an ideal gambling parlor activity. I don't think that ought to have been allowed either. If I were the dictator of the world, I would have some kind of a tax on short-term gains that made the stock market very much less liquid and drove out this marriage of gambling parlor and legitimate capital development of the country. It's not a good marriage, and I think we need a divorce. The safe assumption for an investor is that over the next 100 years, the currency is going to zero. What brought in Hitler was the combination of the Weimar inflation, where they utterly destroyed the savings of the middle class in Germany, followed by the Great Depression. It was a 1-2 punch. And Hitler came in, crazy demagogue, with 40% of the votes, and pretty soon we had a dictator hell-bent for world war. So the history is not pleasant. And Germany was a very advanced and civilized nation, the Germany that Hitler took over. You'd have to have some kind of a rule that just made stocks way less liquid. We have all the real estate we want, all the shopping centers and auto agencies and so forth, without having a perfect liquid market. We would have a stock market that was way less liquid. When I was young, we had a stock market that was way less liquid, way fewer shares. When I was at the Harvard Law School, we seldom traded 1 million shares in a day. Now we trade billions. We don't need a stock market that liquid. What we're getting is wretched excess and danger for the country. And everybody loves it because it's like a bunch of people get drunk at a party. They're having so much fun getting drunk that they don't think about the consequences. It has bad consequences. You can argue that the wretched excesses of the 20s gave us the Great Depression, and the Great Depression gave us Hitler. Of course, in a modern democracy in the age of Keynes, you're going to get big government reaction. The reaction this time was bigger than it's ever been before in the history of the United States. They just threw money at the problem. And they were probably right to fear what was going to happen and to be quite liberal in throwing money at it, but they probably overdid it a little. They threw so much money so fast that it's hard for the restaurants to get people to do the work. Of course, it creates tension. And the reason it creates tension is that people they're not really motivated by greed. They're motivated by envy. It's the nature of our species that we look around us at other people and are envious of them if they have more than we do. And that envy has always been a big problem. That's the reason the laws of Moses said you couldn't envy the neighbor's wife, you couldn't envy the neighbor's land, you couldn't even envy your neighbor's donkey. which wasn't much of a farm animal, by the way. And the old Jews were having trouble with envy, and we're still having it. And so, of course, it'll never go away as long as you have human beings. When you throw money, when you print money on the scale that modern nations are printing it, Japan, the United States, Europe, etc., we're getting into new territory in terms of size. The Japanese bought back not only a lot of their own debt, but a lot of their common stocks. So the Federal Reserve System, you can't imagine how much money printing Japan has done. And they haven't had all that much inflation, and it's still a very admirable civilization. In fact, you could argue that Japan is one of the more admirable civilizations in the whole world. And in spite of all this very extreme government money printing they've done, and they haven't had terrible consequences. Now they've had 25 years of stasis with living standards not improving very much. I don't think that came from their macroeconomic policies. I think that came from the rise of tough competition for their export powerhouse from China and Korea. At any rate, it's weird what's happening, and nobody knows for sure how it's going to work out. I think it's encouraging that Japan can print as much money as it has and remain as civilized and calm and admirable as it has. And so I hope to God the United States has similar happy outcome. But I think the Japanese are better adapted for stasis than we are. I think it's a duty-filled, civilized bunch of people, a lot of them older, not many young people, and they just suck it in and cope. In our country, we have terrible tensions. It's way harder to run a country which is not mono-ethnic like Japan. Think what we too have already created. We actually helped China by being so friendly to their imports. We helped them take, I would say, over 1 billion people out of poverty and to a pretty advanced state of civilization. Why would we stop? Why do we need to be motivated by envy? There's always going to be somebody that's getting rich faster than you are, particularly if they start poor. And so why should a great civilization like ours care if a new civilization rises?